All right, everyone, get ready for our deep dive today. We're going headfirst into the latest and greatest in genomics. Yeah, we're talking brand new research, incredible discoveries, and we're pulling from everywhere. Medical journals, those bioinformatics feeds, even the financial world. Because let me tell you, companies are placing some big bets on the future of genomics. Are you ready to geek out a little with us?
Oh, absolutely. This is where it gets real. We see how these new discoveries are going to change things for all of us, and it's moving fast.
No kidding. Okay, so first, let's just address the elephant in the room, right? Antibiotic resistance. Scary stuff, but you know what? Some researchers might have found, like, a sneaky new way to fight it. News-medical.net had an article about how scientists are zeroing in on these unique pathways in bacteria. They're called metabolic pathways. Think of it as, like, the bacteria's supply chain.
Yeah, it's a really cool approach. So instead of just trying to wipe out the entire bacterial cell with those traditional antibiotics, which, that can lead to resistance and all those nasty side effects, they're like snipers. They're targeting these specific metabolic pathways that the bacteria absolutely needs to survive.
So basically cutting off their supply lines.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's like a targeted strike instead of, just going in with guns blazing.
Yeah.
But are we talking about completely new drugs here, or is it more about using the antibiotics we already have in a smarter way?
That's a great question. It could be both, actually. They're finding these pathways that are like vital for the bacteria, but not for us humans. So this opens up the possibility of either making completely new drugs that exploit those weaknesses, or maybe even taking those existing antibiotics and sort of repurposing them to be more targeted.
So less damage overall and less chance of the bacteria, figuring out how to fight back, becoming resistant. I like the sound of that. Okay, so another area where genomics is making huge waves is in cancer research, obviously. Again, this is from news-medical.net. Researchers found a major player in osteosarcoma, which is a type of bone cancer. And apparently this discovery could help doctors predict how aggressive the cancer is going to be and how well someone might respond to treatment.
Exactly. It's about getting more personalized with treatments. The more we know about the specific genes that are driving someone's cancer, the better we can tailor their treatment plan. And hopefully, that means a better outcome for them in the end. We're talking about taking out the guesswork and giving doctors better tools.
Precise tools, right. And speaking of personalized medicine, our sources were talking about some pretty exciting advances in breast cancer research, too. Scientists figured out how specific parts of proteins actually contribute to the disease developing.
Now this is really exciting because it opens up a whole new world of targeted therapies. Imagine if we could create drugs that specifically block those problematic parts of the proteins, stopping cancer right at its source, at the molecular level. It's like we're getting ahead of the game.
Wow. It's like we're finally starting to understand the language that these diseases are speaking, right?
Mm.
Okay, I'm ready for more. What else did you find in the genomics news? Hit me.
Get ready for a whole bunch of acronyms because RNA sequencing it's having a moment. The RNA-Seq blog was just full of new tools and amazing discoveries.
Okay, break it down for me. What is it about RNA sequencing that's so special? I know it has something to do with genes being, active, but what does that even mean?
Okay, so think of it this way. DNA, that's like the blueprint, but RNA, that's the construction crew area. RNA sequencing, what it does is it allows us to actually see which genes are being transcribed actively, meaning they're being read and used to make proteins. It's like seeing which parts of that blueprint are actually being used to build the house.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. So it's not just about what genes you have, but which ones are actually, doing their thing.
You got it. And that's a huge deal when we're trying to figure out how cells work, both when we're healthy and when we're sick. Like with cancer, we can see which genes are making the tumor grow, or in infectious diseases, we can see how bacteria are responding to the antibiotics we throw at them.
So many possibilities. But I'm guessing this RNA sequencing technology is pretty complicated, right?
Oh, it can be, yeah. But that's where some of these new tools come in. The RNA-Seq blog was talking about this package called TRIAGE for R. Now, R is this statistical programming language, and this tool helps researchers find and study those regulatory genes. The ones that control what other genes do. Think of them as like the foreman on that construction site, the ones calling the shots.
Interesting. So triage for R basically makes it easier for researchers to analyze all this crazy, complex RNA sequencing data and figure out, which genes are the real bosses in the cell.
Exactly. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of it and helps them make sense of this huge amount of data that comes from RNA sequencing. And that's just one tool. There's also singleDeep. And this one, it uses deep neural networks to predict what a sample is, like things like how advanced a disease is or how someone might respond to a certain drug, all from just single-cell RNA sequencing data.
Yeah.
Imagine that. It's like having a crystal ball for each individual cell.
Wait a minute. Single-cell RNA sequencing. Does that mean they can look at the activity of each cell on its own? That's got to be revolutionary.
Oh, it absolutely is. It's like RNA sequencing, but on a whole new level of detail. It lets us see all the amazing diversity within a group of cells, which is super important for understanding complex diseases like cancer, where each cell can be a little bit different.
Wow, so it's like we're profiling each cell. It's crazy how much information we can get from something so tiny. It's like a super powerful microscope for the world of genes.
Yeah, and the tools are getting even better. The RNA-Seq blog talked about this AI-powered tool called MISO. It uses spatial multi-omics, which means it combines RNA sequencing with location information. So it doesn't just tell you what genes are active, it tells you where they are in the tissue sample, like a GPS for every single cell, showing you its address in the body.
Okay, talk about precision medicine. It's like we're zooming in to the cellular level, literally. So what kind of impact is this having on research, in the real world? Are there any examples of how RNA sequencing is being used to help us understand diseases right now?
Oh, absolutely. The RNA-Seq blog highlighted a bunch of cool studies. Like, there's new research on diffuse large B-cell lymphoma, that's DLBCL for short, and also on neuroblastoma, which is a type of childhood cancer. Both of these studies are using single-cell RNA sequencing to get a really clear picture of what's happening at the cellular level.
Okay, so they're trying to use RNA sequencing to figure out how these cancers actually work. But why is single-cell sequencing so important here? I mean, couldn't they just look at the entire tumor all at once?
It all comes down to how diverse cancer is. Each tumor is made up of tons of different kinds of cells, kind of like a city with different neighborhoods, right? Single-cell RNA sequencing lets us zoom in on each neighborhood and see what's going on there.
So they're figuring out who the troublemakers are in each neighborhood. But that's super helpful for designing treatments that are more targeted, right?
You got it. When we know the specific features of each cell population in the tumor, we can develop treatments that are going to be more effective and have fewer side effects. We can go after the bad guys without hurting the good guys.
It's like a surgical strike against the cancer cells. Pretty amazing. But this all sounds so incredibly complicated. I mean, do you need like a PhD to understand this stuff, let alone work with it?
Well, it definitely helps to have some serious science background, haha. But speaking of jobs, the RNA-Seq blog had a job posting for a bacterial RNA specialist. So if anyone out there is looking for a career in genomics, there you go. Now's the time to jump in.
That's a great point. And it's the perfect lead-in to talk about the business side of genomics for a minute. BioIT World had a piece on Illumina. That's the company that makes a lot of the sequencing machines used in all this research. And they were making waves at the JPM Healthcare Conference, which is kind of like the Super Bowl of healthcare, right?
Yeah, Illumina's like the big name in genomics right now. And at JPM, they were really talking about how they want to go beyond just sequencing. They're focused on multi-omics, which is all about putting together data from different sources like genomics, proteomics, metabolomics, you name it.
Okay, hold on a second. I'm going to need you to translate that one for me.
Yeah.
Multi-omics. What's the deal with that?
All right, so think of it this way. Genomics is like reading the blueprint. Multi-omics is like actually seeing the whole construction project in action. You're not just looking at the genes, but also the proteins they create, all the metabolic processes happening in the cell, the whole shebang. It's about seeing the complete picture.
So it's not just about the genes on their own, but how they work together with everything else in the cell.
Okay.
I'm with you. But why is that so important?
Because it gives us this much deeper understanding of how things work in the body, how biological systems function. It's like the difference between looking at a single piece of a puzzle or seeing the whole picture come together. We can create better treatments, diagnose diseases earlier, even predict who's at risk for certain conditions.
So basically, genomics on steroids.
Yeah.
And Illumina is leading the way.
They're a huge player, that's for sure. And they're also really pushing the boundaries of what's possible with partnerships. They're working with other companies to develop new uses for their technology and get into new areas of healthcare. It's really exciting to see what's going to happen next.
It's like genomics is moving out of the research lab and into our lives. And with that, I'm guessing AI is playing a bigger and bigger role too, right? Nature.com had a ton of articles about the use of deep learning and machine learning in genomics research.
Oh, yeah. AI is becoming a must-have tool in genomics. We're talking about analyzing enormous amounts of data, finding patterns that humans would never be able to see, and making predictions about things like disease risk, how someone will respond to a treatment, even new drug discoveries.
Okay, I get that AI is powerful, but can you give me some actual examples of how it's being used in genomics right now? I need something concrete to wrap my head around.
Sure. So one example is predicting how viruses are going to change. With AI, researchers can look at the genomes of viruses and try to predict how they're going to mutate, which is super important for making vaccines and antiviral drugs that actually work. And then there's cancer identification. Machine learning algorithms are being used to analyze medical images, things like mammograms and CT scans, so they can detect cancer earlier and more accurately.
Wow, it's like giving doctors a superpower using AI.
Yeah.
But it's not all about the really high-tech stuff, right? What about the more fundamental research, the basics? Nature.com mentioned something about a new data set of fundus images from babies. Now, I don't know much about ophthalmology, but I'm guessing those are images of the back of the eye.
You got it. Fundus images can tell you a lot about the health of the eye. And this new data set is a gold mine for researchers who are studying eye development and eye diseases in babies. This could help doctors diagnose and treat eye problems earlier, maybe even prevent vision loss in kids. Sometimes it's the stuff that seems simple that can make a huge difference.
That's a really good point. And it reminds us that progress in genomics isn't always about those big aha moments. It's about consistently building up our knowledge and data, which moves the whole field forward.
Exactly. And it's not always about the fancy, expensive tools either. One of our sources even talked about a new method for classifying diffuse large B-cell lymphoma. And this method just uses bulk tumor RNA sequencing profiles. It could totally change how we personalize lymphoma treatment.
Hang on, so they're classifying lymphoma using RNA sequencing. How does that even work?
It's all about understanding where the cancer came from, its origins. By looking at the RNA profile of the tumor, researchers can figure out what type of cell the lymphoma started from. This is super important because lymphomas that come from different cells can have different prognoses and might respond differently to different treatments.
So it's like they're tracing the family history of the cancer. Right. Knowing where it came from helps doctors choose the right treatment.
That's the idea. And it really shows how powerful RNA sequencing can be. It's giving us insights that can directly impact patient care. It's not just about understanding the science, it's about using that knowledge to help people.
That's what I love about this field. It's not just theoretical, it's really making a difference in people's lives.
And we're just scratching the surface. Our sources even talked about research that uses RNA sequencing to decipher the control mechanisms in bacteria, which could help us understand how they become resistant to antibiotics.
Oh, wow. So back to fighting those superbugs, huh?
Yeah.
It seems like RNA sequencing is like the Swiss Army knife of genomics. It can be used for everything, from personalized medicine to tackling infectious diseases to just understanding the basic building blocks of life itself. It really is amazing how much this one tool can do. RNA sequencing, I mean. And speaking of things that are amazing, we can't forget about that research on cell migration from nature.com. I remember learning about cells moving around way back in high school biology, but this research is getting into, like, the nuts and bolts of how it all works.
Yeah, this is about those really fundamental principles of how cells move and how they interact with their surroundings. It's like physics meets biology, like you said.
Okay, but why should we care about how cells move? Isn't that, like, just a basic function of life? What's the big deal?
Well, think about it. Cell migration is involved in so many important processes, like wound healing, for example, or how embryos develop. But then, when cell migration gets out of control, that's how cancer spreads. That's metastasis.
Ah, I see. So if we understand how cells move, we might be able to actually stop cancer from spreading.
Exactly. This research could lead to new treatments that target those cell migration pathways, to either speed up healing or to block the spread of disease. It's about controlling the movement, like you said.
It's pretty mind-blowing to think about all the different ways this research could be applied. And it just goes to show you, genomics is really touching every single part of our lives these days.
It's true. It really is a remarkable time to be learning about and working in this field. Genomics is changing medicine, it's changing biology, it's even changing how we see ourselves as humans. And it's all happening so quickly.
It really is. So let's bring it back to our listeners for a minute. Why should they care about all of this? What's the message to take home from all this incredible research?
I think the main takeaway here is that genomics isn't some far-off field anymore. It's affecting all of us right now. Whether we're talking about new treatments for infectious diseases or more personalized ways to treat cancer or just understanding how our bodies work at the most basic level, genomics is right at the heart of it all.
And it's pretty amazing to realize that we're living in a time when we have access to all this incredible knowledge. But where do we go from here? What can our listeners do if they want to dive deeper into the world of genomics themselves?
There are so many cool ways to get involved. I mean, you could start by learning more about your own genetic history. There are all those direct-to-consumer genetic testing services out there now. Or you could even look for opportunities to participate in research studies. A lot of research institutions are looking for volunteers to share their data, which helps us understand human health even better.
Yeah, it's like an open invitation to come explore this amazing world of genomics and see how it can impact your own life. Who knows, maybe you'll even get inspired to make it your career. It's a booming field.
Absolutely. There are so many amazing opportunities in genomics, in research, in medicine, in technology, you name it. It's a field that's just bursting with potential for innovation and new discoveries.
Well, that's about it for our deep dive into the world of genomics. We hope you've enjoyed the journey and maybe even learned a thing or two along the way. But more importantly, we hope you're inspired to keep learning and exploring this ever-changing field. Who knows what amazing breakthroughs are waiting for us just around the corner.
Stay curious, everyone.